They didn't shape you with force. They shaped you with repetition. With words said too often. With looks that judged without speaking. With silence that taught you what not to be. Little by little, you learned which parts of you were acceptable, and which ones had to disappear. You watched yourself change, not because you wanted to, but because being yourself felt unsafe. So you adjusted. You adapted. You became what was easier to accept. Not happier. Not freer. Just quieter. You smiled when you were supposed to. You agreed when you wanted to scream. You nodded, even when something inside you was breaking. And over time, that voice inside you grew softer. Until one day, you couldn't hear it at all. Have you ever looked at yourself and felt nothing looking back? Not emptiness. Not fear. Just distance. You stare into the mirror, and something feels wrong. The face moves. The eyes blink. But it doesn't feel like you. It feels like someone you were taught to become. A shape built by voices. By expectations. By quiet commands you never questioned. And somewhere along the way, you stopped asking who you were. You just learned how to look like someone else. At some point, you stopped noticing when it happened. The silence didn't arrive suddenly. It grew slowly, like a shadow stretching across your thoughts. You learned how to function without feeling. How to smile without meaning it. How to exist without asking why. Days blended together. Moments lost their weight. Nothing felt real, yet everything kept moving. You followed routines you never chose. You carried expectations that were never yours. And still, you told yourself this was normal. Because everyone else seemed fine. You began to doubt your own discomfort. You questioned your instincts. You silenced your doubts before they could speak. And little by little, you disappeared behind the version they needed. Not because you were weak, but because you were human. At some point, you realized something was missing. Not suddenly. Not loudly. It was a quiet absence. A space inside you that no longer responded. You tried to remember who you were before the noise, before the rules, before the expectations. But the memory felt distant. Blurred. Almost. You searched for yourself in the things you used to love. In the words you used to believe. In the dreams you once had. But nothing answered back. You began to move through life like a guest in your own body. Watching yourself speak. Watching yourself react. Detached. Observing. Numb. And the strangest part was how normal it all felt. How easy it became to live without truly being there. At some point, you stop fighting it. Not because you understand it, but because you're tired. Tired of asking why. Tired of hoping something will change. Tired of waiting for a version of yourself that never comes back. So you let the silence stay. You let the days pass without questioning their meaning. You learn how to function inside the emptiness. How to breathe without feeling alive. How to exist without expecting more. The world keeps moving around you. People laugh. People dream. People want things. And you simply watch. Not jealous. Not angry. Just distant. You begin to understand something terrifying. This version of you works. It survives. It fits. And slowly, you stop asking if this was ever the life you wanted. At some point, even the emptiness stops hurting. Not because it healed, but because you stopped noticing it. You wake up. You move. You breathe. Not with intention. Not with desire. Just because your body remembers how. Days pass without leaving a mark. Voices blend into noise. Faces lose their meaning. Nothing reaches you anymore. You don't feel sadness. You don't feel peace. You feel nothing. And somehow, that nothing becomes familiar. Comfortable. You stop resisting it. You stop questioning it. You let yourself fade while still standing. Still functioning. Still seen. But no longer felt. And in that quiet absence, you realize something terrifying. You didn't disappear. You simply stopped being there. At some point, you begin to see yourself from the outside. Not as a person. Not as a story. But as something that exists. Because it learned how to. You watch your body move. You hear your voice speak. You see your reflection respond. And yet, none of it feels like you. There is no pain in this realization. No fear. Only clarity. You understand now that you didn't lose yourself all at once. You gave yourself away piece by piece. To be accepted. To be understood. To survive. And in doing so, you became something functional, but hollow. You don't ask for freedom anymore. You don't search for meaning. You simply remain. Aware. Silent. Still. And maybe that's the most unsettling part. That you're still here. Watching.